Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to Anime King, and I'm gonna be giving you a new series guys. Part 1 of What If Naruto was the same age as Itachi. If you enjoyed this and you want to see part 2, comment down below and tell me that you want to see part 2 guys. And I'll be posting it as soon as possible. And also go ahead and check out Digitize27, I'll be leaving the link down in the description for you guys to enjoy. And also go ahead and check out the last episode of What If Naruto Unlocked a strange power over an anime king 2, the last episode guys. But don't worry because you already know that new what ifs are coming out and this is one of them guys. But stay in tune because I'm going to be posting what if Naruto's giving a second chance next on this channel. So stay in tune for that guys and I hope you guys enjoy. And remember to comment down below and tell me if you're new, I'll be replying talking about all of you. So without further ado, what is we begin this new episode? Start the intro. Hey mom! Kushina looked down from dishes that she was cleaning. As she looked around, hey mom! As this time a young boy slipped into the kitchen, his bare feet slapping against the floor. She chuckled at her son's antics as she placed down the bowl that she was wiping. What is it, Naruto-chan? The small boy beamed up at his mother, as he had a big smile on his face. Kushina smiled to her son as she bent down with some difficulty, as she gently stroked his cheek. Dad is hiding again. Kushina chuckled as she used the counter to pull herself up. Naruto looked at her strangely before walking closer as he placed his hand on her large, round belly. Mom, when is my sister gonna be finished cooking? He asked. Kushina simply laughed again, somewhat regretting Minato explaining to Naruto why she was slowly getting larger in the past months. A few more weeks, she said, or they anticipating the fun that you'd have with your sibling. How does she fit in there if you already have a fox in your tummy? Kushina sighed, another thing she regret Naruto being told about. You know we tell you when you're older, now come on. If dad is hiding, what do you do? She asked. He said as he placed a hand to his chin. Kushina just smiled at how cute he was. We find him, but dad's using Hiroshin. I think he is cheating. Kushina looked around. Oh really, she said. Well, I think you're right, Naruto-chan, that is cheating. And cheaters need to be caught, she said, as she extended her arm forward, as golden chain came from her arm, as it dashed through the room of the two storehouses that the family lived in. It snaked about, crawling up in the rooms, until it came behind a hiding blonde. Before Minato knew what was going on, he was wrapped up by the large glowing chain. As he was carried through the house, he came in front of his laughing wife and extra laughing son. He tried to keep a stern face, but a smirk broke through. Now Naruto, I didn't think you would bring your mother into this. It was supposed to be a fair game. As Naruto shook his head, no. When I go to the academy, I'm going to be a shinobi. And a shinobi has to use every advantage to win. Minato chuckled at his wife, releasing from the special chains. Well, at least you're right about that. As he ruffled his son's spiky red hair, the perfect mix between his and Kushina. But what is even more important than that, Naruto? As Naruto entered his adorable thinking pose once again. Teamwork and always sticking by your comrades. Minato nodded and patted his head again. Right. As he kissed Kushina, as Naruto turned away. Oh, mom, dad, what do you have to do that around me? He asked. As both of them looked at him, with amusement on their face. As Kushina looked at him, he was just like her when he was younger. Well, he had almost everything from his father though. If he didn't get the red hair from her, people would not believe that he was her son, because he looked just so much like Minato. The only thing he got from her was the red hair. Now Naruto-chan, one day you will find a girl you like, and you will be doing the exact same things with her. As she bent down again, being held by her husband as she wrapped up Naruto in a hug. And then, you can have your own family. Naruto simply nodded. His mother was always stressing the importance of family. Yeah, I just wish you wouldn't have to do all the yucky stuff in between, he said. Minato laughed at that as he helped Kushina up to her feet. But Naruto, that's the best part. As he kissed Kushina once again, making Naruto run out of the room, yelling. That only made the two of them chuckle. As Minato turned back to his wife. And how are my girls today? As Kushina sighed, she leaned back on the counter. Very tired, although little Sugaru seems as restless as ever. I swear she's gonna be worse than Naruto. Just a few more weeks, Kuchi-chan, he said. As she nodded and turned back to the bowl that she was cleaning. At least this time she knew what to expect after assaulting her friend Mikoto for answers on her birth. Right, Minakan. And then we get to watch Naruto in the first days in the academy. He smiles, he starts to walk out of the room. Hey, where are you going? Minato chuckled as he went searching for his son. I'm going to train Naruto some more. It won't do good for Namikaze or Uzumaki to be left behind in the academy. Kushina smiled, she turned back around as a baby kick. Just a few more weeks, Sakura. Just a few more weeks. Time skip. 18 days later, as Naruto stood in the clearing, as he had on a blindfold, as he held a single kunai by its handle. 6 kunai were scattered around the clearing, each of them with 3-pronged kunai, as Minato walked around, not making a sound. Until he finally spoke. Alright Naruto, you have to listen carefully. Feel for the slightest disturbance, your reflex to do the rest. Naruto nodded as the muscles in his arms tensed in anticipation. He waited until he felt his father leave the clearing, knowing the wind died down immediately, as he was left with a calm, tranquil sound. He then spun around and thrust out his kunai. He then lifted up his blindfold to see his father hold on to the kunai that he threw. With wide eyes he stared. It was just a few inches away from his father's throat. Minato coughed as he pulled the blade away. Its sudden accuracy was on par with the Uchiha. That was good, Naruto. I think you have listening to your environment down. As he looked down the kunai and gulped. It was a good job that he was the fastest man alive. Naruto was not even in the academy yet, and still, he was able to do something like this. He smiled. Naruto was definitely his son, although he wished he had inherited his blonde hair. He could only hope for little Sakura. Your accuracy is spot on too. Naruto started to jump up in a little dance. But that is no excuse to get complacent. Remember to keep on training no matter what the situation is. If you aren't at your peak, how are you supposed to protect your comrades? As he kneeled down and placed Naruto onto his shoulders. And your family, he said. As Naruto nodded, he would never stop training, he would always protect the people close to him no matter what. Minato, said a voice as Minato spun around, making Naruto giggle as he was thrown around his shoulders. He watched as his wife came staggering into the garden, clutching her stomach as she wheezed. As she was going through her breathing exercises. Kuchi-chan, he said. She's coming, Minato, said Kushina. He blinked as he stood there, still, his mind shutting down. Thankfully, Naruto knocked him on the head. As he flashed out of his daze and shot forward, Naruto had to grab onto his shoulders and not fall off. We just need to call Baiwaku, right? Kushina nodded as Minato set Naruto on the ground before vanishing. He returned moments later, old enough flustered and slightly irritated by Wako. As Luman took one look at the situation and realized what was going on, as she placed a hand on Kushina's shoulder, Kushina relaxed as calming chakra started to flow into her system, making her fall limply into Minato's arms with a lazy smile on her face. He started to carry his wife off before a small voice interrupted him. Dad, what's going on? As Minato freezed, as he quickly rushed back to his son's side, making sure not to disturb Kushina too much. Don't worry about it, Naruto, everything is fine. Just wait inside, okay? As Naruto simply nodded. Just think of this, Naruto, by the time I come back tonight, you're going to have a little sister. Naruto smiled brightly at that, forgetting all the confused things that happened so far, as Minato ruffled his son here. Moments later, Naruto watched from a window as his father carried his mother away to a safe house. For a moment he was confused why they weren't going to the hospital, but he didn't really know where baby come from, so he shrugged it off. Time skip. Naruto was getting worried. He finished training a few hours ago, so he was just lazing around and raiding the fridge whenever he could. Now he was sitting by the window, waiting for his parents to return to his new sister. He was excited as he was going to play with her a lot and teach her things like jutsu. Well, when he learned some as well. He already had the substitution down, it was part of his father's speed, trained to see how many times he could substitute in a minute. It was getting late though, and it was well past his bedtime. Well, he would never admit that he needed one, but his eyelids, they were growing rather heavy. Yet he wanted to be awake. He was waiting for his new family to return home, but the couch he was lying on was getting really comfortable. He didn't know when, but he fell asleep. And then it happened. He jolted up on the couch, his eyes scanning around the room wondering what was going on. As he heard screams and destruction, he quickly rushed to the window as he saw a sight that belongs to his childish nightmares. Thick black smokes, the village was burning, buildings lay in ruins, getting worse towards the edge of the village. And then he saw it, the large nine-tailed fox slashing everything around it, its tail destroying buildings that sweep. For a moment he could have sworn that the enormous creature looked straight into his eyes. As Naruto stumbled backwards and fell to the ground. As Naruto looked around, he wondered where his parents were. He quickly ran upstairs, as he jumped right on the bed, as he covered himself with a sheet. Suddenly, Minato appeared in the room, as he looked around as he called Naruto, but then he saw the lump right on the bed under the sheets. As he made his way over, as Naruto saw his father in his Hokage's cloak. Naruto, I need you to be brave right now, he said. You need to come with me. There's something we have to do. Naruto nodded, confused, but he nodded. Minato smiled as he lifted up Naruto. Dad, where's mom and my little sister? He asked. Minato didn't say anything, but a small tear ran down Minato's face. Both disappeared in an instant. As they reappeared, Naruto heard the civilian screams even louder. As destruction was everywhere around them, his father set him down on the roof that he arrived on. He looked around as his eyes went wide when he saw the giant fox looking at him. As the fox was swiping at shinobis that were trying to stop it, he was about to run backwards away from this aura of rage and anger that the beast let off. But his father's words came back to him. He needed to be strong. As Minato went through hand signs, Gamabunta crashed right on top of the fox's head. Naruto was suddenly swept off his feet once again as both of them vanished. He looked around. Mom! Naruto screamed out as he saw his mother over there on the ground. Kushina swept her son up in a hug as a large altar poofed into existence behind them. The Nine-Tails was thrashing around violently, wondering where it had been taken. Naruto, I love you. Please be strong. He didn't know what was going on as he was crying. It was all just going too fast for him. Mom, I don't They both looked up as the beast crashed his hand on the ground, creating a massive earthquake. Dust flew everywhere. All he saw was his father standing there. Chains erupted from his mother's back. He found himself being laid into the altar, staring up into his mother's eyes. He saw the tears. Her eyes were swollen and red, but she gave him a sweet smile. It's gonna be okay, Naruto-chan. Everything's gonna be okay. Naruto didn't understand what was going on the same way, but he tried to take comfort in his mother's eyes and smile. He then felt a blinding pain, like his insides were being set on fire. He screamed out, but his mother just held him tighter as she pulled him in close. He was breathing heavily, not noticing the sea that was starting to rise on his stomach. He then heard a loud roar as he froze. He slowly opened his eyes to see his mother over him. As his eyes went wide when he saw a claw right near his face, but his mother was holding it back. She gulped, tears streamed down her cheeks as she took one last look at her son. Naruto, She felt limp a moment later, her body falling down in a growing pool of her own blood. As Naruto stood there in shock, the beast burst into chakra and rushed into his body. His body was numb at the moment, so he didn't feel anything. He stood there until he felt a warm hand placed right on his shoulder. As he turned to look up at the pain-stricken face of his father, although Minato tried to hide it with a smile. As he saw the seal on his father's stomach, not knowing one was on his own. Dad! Minato simply smiled, as he could feel his life being sucked away. Know that we're proud of you, Naruto. We always will be. I wasn't fast enough. As he slumped to his knees. You have to be faster for me. Okay, Naruto? As Naruto simply nodded, a part of him not really believing that this was really happening. Minato took off his cloak and wrapped his son up in it, as his body slumped down, dead. That was the scene that Hiruzen came to see. The two dead parents with their shivering son just looking on. Hiruzen sighed, knowing that this was a possibility, as he made his way over. As Naruto collapsed unconscious, Hiruzen picked him up, as he looked on the legacy of what was supposed to be his successor, a single tear in the corner of his eyes, as he looked back at two of his dear friends. He had already lost so much tonight, his wife, his friends, but Naruto lost everything. As he walked away from the clearing, allowing the envoys to do their jobs and take the bodies. The village would require him to be strong right now, and Naruto would require him to be strong. Yes, he had to be strong for the boy. Time skip, rain pounded down on the ground, but Naruto could not feel it because his body felt numb and raw at the moment. As he looked at the memorial stone, the service wasn't long, but it was powerful. Everyone had gone by now. He was left alone, staring at three names inscribed in the stone, seeing his own face in the polished rock. He wasn't sure how long he was standing there, until he felt a hand on his shoulder. It was the Hokage. Come now, Naruto. You catch a cold if you stay out much longer. Naruto didn't reply or didn't even move. His eyes just went over the three names over and over. Hiruzen sighed. It would take time, but he would recover. But it will take time. You should go home, Naruto. The academy starts tomorrow. Your parents would have wanted you to go. As Naruto nodded as he walked off, not even glancing back at the formerly retired Hokage, as his body was too numb to really do anything right now. The pain, the emotional pain was just too much. Time skipped. Naruto made his way through the village. As he was going to the academy, he was wearing one of his father's old tracksuit. He didn't know why he picked it out specifically, but it was smooth, and it felt like his father. His spiky hair was all around. As he ran a hand through it, remembering how his mother always wanted to lie down gently like her own. As his hand went back down to his side, as he crossed into the academy, as he moved past the students, and took a seat at the back. Some of them were crying while others were consoling their friends to the best of their abilities. Most were shocked but otherwise okay. He noticed a young black-haired boy was in the back as well, across from him. He sat down to watch the rest of the class came in. No haste to their movements. The Kyuubi attack hit hard and fast. No one escaped without some damage. He looked down his own stomach as he knew what he contained within him. The very creature that took away the life of many and his parents. As it made him angry as his fingernails crawled against the decks. People looked at him with strange looks, but he didn't really care. No one sat next to him even though there was an empty seat. He didn't know why. Was it because of what he contained? Or just because of the vibes coming from him? But he was glad for the solitude. It let him think. But that wasn't really a good thing right now because his thoughts was drifting to dark, well, really dark things nowadays. Finally, the last of the students came in as the sensei cleared his throat, talking about how the attack weakened the village but it will never break their will of fire or something like that. Naruto zoned out, but he still had an ear out for any good information, as he still remembered the last promise he made to his father. He was going to get stronger, he was going to get faster, he was going to protect those precious to him. As he slumped down next and closed his eyes. He wasn't sleeping, he was just tuning out everything around him. He was awoken though, as the door to the classroom opened. All eyes turned towards her. As she was now on the floor, she had actually moved off too fast and collapsed to the floor when the door burst open. She picked herself up with a grin as she straightened out her clothes. Naruto took a moment to look over her purple hair and clothing that looked too big for her before placing his head back down on the decks. He didn't realize the seat was next to him. That was the last one available. As he felt someone sit beside him, it must be her. She looked at him strangely before looking back at the teacher. Within 5 minutes, she was leaning back on the chair. As she started to sleep, even her tongue was out of her mouth. Naruto tried to listen to what the teacher was talking about to see if it was anything important, but the girl's snoring was becoming rather annoying. As he opened his eyes and looked up at her, as she cracked an eye towards him and smirked, before she started to snore once again. The teacher threw his eraser across the room, hitting her right in the forehead, knocking her out of her fake sleep. As she tumbled back, as she rubbed her head. "What was that for?" she said. The teacher's eye just twitched violently as he held up the clipboard. "Uncle Midarashi," he said. She glared at him. "Yes, sensei," as he glared back at her. He sighed and looked back at the clipboard. As he looked at Nick's name, Naruto Namikaze, there were a few murmurs that spread around the room. As Naruto stood up and nodded respectfully, as the teacher nodded back. As he then sat back down. He hoped his teachers, all of them, was not like that. He wanted to learn. He didn't want to get pampered. As Uncle sat back down, rubbing her sore head. As all the kids were whispering, she was confused. "Hey, what's your problem?" As he looked at the students that Uncle were motioning to. "It's because of my name." "So what? Means fish cake, right?" A tick appeared on her face as he tried to ignore her. "No, my surname. And also, it means maelstrom." Uncle chuckled. "Whatever you say, fish cake." Naruto's eye twitched as he blocked her out completely, as he returned to stare at his decks. "So what's up with Namikaze?" she asked. But Naruto ignored her. It made her angry, so she ignored him back. She tried to think why Namikaze sounds so familiar, but it wouldn't come to her. She didn't really talk to kids her own age, so she wasn't well informed. Finally, the teacher dismissed them for lunch break. As a gust of wind blew in the class, when everyone looked back around, Naruto was gone. Vanished. Uncle blinked as she was amazed by his speed. She tried to match super speed with Namikaze, but it just wouldn't click to her. As she shrugged and went out of the room, glaring at the teacher the same way for hitting her with the eraser. As soon as she was outside, she looked for the speedy red head. She hadn't got that much sleep last night, so she collapsed on the grass. As she looked at the birds flying, she then saw the boy she was looking for. Her eyes went wide when he walked up the side of the academy roof. As she wondered if she hit her head harder than she thought, or was it something she ate made she hallucinate. He was walking up the roof. She rushed inside and rushed up the building. As she took the stairs, as she came through the door to see him there, as he was sitting on the ledge, looking over. She tried to sneak up there. "If you try to sneak up on me, you're not very sneaky." Uncle paused. Damn it, he knew that she was there. "Wasn't trying to," she said. "Then what were you trying to do?" Naruto asked. She froze, unsure what to say. For some reason, she didn't want to tell him that she was looking for him for the sake of it. "How did you walk out the building?" she asked. As Naruto glanced at her, before turning back and looking at the academy grounds. "With chakra," he said. like it was the most obvious thing in the world. But yet his voice held no arrogance. It just sounded tired. Could you teach me? Uncle wasn't even sure where that came from. It was like it was on instinct. As Naruto turned and looked at her with critical eyes. Why? I'm sure one of our sensei will teach it to us eventually. Uncle simply grinned as she walked over and sit beside him. Yeah, but if I can learn it now, why not learn it now? As Naruto looked at her, it sounded like something that his mother might say, when she knew that she won the argument. I guess, I don't see why not. As Uncle grinned, a bright smile that eased some of the pain that had settled into his heart since his parents' death. For the first time in weeks, the edges of his mouth turned up into a small smile. Time skip. Naruto was watching Anko as she was tumbling or blasting herself off the tree. As Naruto remembers his own trying to do this just a few months ago, as he jumped from the tree that he was in and walked over. You're still putting too much chakra into it, he said. As Anko looked up at his face. His voice, it had no criticism to it. She puffed out her cheeks though. What's your point? Naruto raised the eyebrow, but he showed no amusement as he sighed as he looked between her and the tree. The way his father taught him was going to work here. As he offered her the hand, she took it. As he pulled her up as she stood up with a grunt. There was a brief pause as Naruto thought. Lie down next to the tree. She looked at him, wondering why he changed his method of teaching. Finally agreeing that you were wrong. Naruto looked at her. No, it's just people learn differently. It's obvious the way my father taught me. It's not going to work for you. She gave in as she lied down and placed her feet against the tree. Now what? Now apply a layer of chakra to your feet and start to take small steps upwards. If you feel yourself slipping, just adjust your control and try again. Anko nodded as her tongue came from her mouth. As Naruto noticed that she did that when she was concentrating, it was certainly different to her attitude in class. She started to walk up into the tree as she used her hands for support until she felt confident enough to release them from the ground. As she got the right dose of chakra, she started to walk up even more. Hey, fish cake! I'm doing it, she said. Naruto twitched at nickname. As he watched her, she took another step, and another, and another. She was training her muscles to stay like that, but some more training would help with that. So, speaking of your dad, don't you have to get back home or something, she asked. As she turned, he was gone. Hey, no, she fell off the tree as she landed on her back. As she got up with a groan, she blinked. Was it something I said? She wondered herself. The next day, Naruto was not the first in class again, as he sat down and waited for the other students to arrive. This time though, he had a small scroll laid out on decks, and every time he would make a note of something. When the students came in, they looked at him strangely, while the young ones who bothered took his way, as it looked like he was doing homework, but they weren't assigned any. As he noticed he wasn't the only one doing individual study, the same black-haired boy that he noticed yesterday was also doing it as well with a scroll. But Naruto ignored him for now, just like he did everyone else, except until Uncle burst in the room, barely on time for class. It was hard not to pay attention to her. Somehow, she looked more tired than yesterday. She was wearing the exact same shirt, he was positive of that. Familiar grass stains on the back of it. Granted, he was wearing the same tracksuit, well, the same style. His father had a lot of them. As he closed his eyes, going through his parents' bedroom brought up a lot of memories for him. He broke it down, and he cried all night. The visions of their death haunted his visions a lot. But he felt refreshed today though. He supposed he just needed to let out some emotions he didn't even know that he kept bottled up. As he opened back his eyes, see Uncle sitting down next to him, as she stuck her tongue out at him. I did, she said. As he looked at her, he could confirm that she hasn't changed her clothes since yesterday. As she smelled at the forest and the earth. Did what? Said Naruto. I walked up a tree. As he simply nodded and turned his head as the teacher came in the classroom. So you're gonna be eating with me again, are you? Said Naruto. As Uncle nodded. As strange as she was, it was unpleasant to be with her. His self-isolation was already getting old. Of course, fish cake sensei, she said with a smile. He blinked, but he did not turn, not allowing her to see the smile that went up his lips. The rest of the morning went on slowly, as Naruto took notes, as Uncle was, well, Uncle, as she pissed off the teacher as much as possible. Starting up a game of dodge eraser, as the rest of the class find her antics irritated, teacher included. A girl on the front bench laughed every time. When Uncle could not dodge the eraser, she had long brunette hair that flowed down her back, pale skin, and the two triangle marks on her cheek that marked her as a Inuzaka, Minato. As Hokage found it very knowledgeable that Naruto be depth about all the clans in Konoha. Other than that, the morning passed on without any problem. Like clockwork, as soon as they were dismissed, he vanished from the room. As Uncle chased him outside the same scale on the side of the building, taking lazy steps to walk up without any problem at all. She placed her feet on the wall as she made her way up. A few kids stopped to watch her, but she ignored them as she walked up the wall. Finally, she walked over to the edge where Naruto was eating from his bento box. She was a bit irritated that he didn't even mention the fact that she did. Like it didn't even matter at all. She sat down in a huff, not even bothered to strike out information as he continued to eat. As he looked around, wondering why she hadn't pestered him for anything yet. As he noticed she didn't have any lunch in front of her. Thinking that she'd forgotten her ace, he turned and gave her his box. She blinked and looked down. What? Why? Naruto gazed at her. He was just doing what he thought was right. His mother had always stressed the workings of equality, while his father always stressed the workings of working together. I have food and you don't. It just seemed like the right thing to do. She stared at him for a moment longer before picking up one of the rice balls. As she raised her remote, but she stopped. What? Said Naruto. It's not poison or anything. Uncle frowned and bit onto the rice ball, smiling as she enjoyed the house-cooked taste. She finished it quick and licked her fingers clean. Thanks for that, said Naruto as he returned to his own meal. No problem, he said. Why are you being so nice to me when all I do is bug you? What do you mean? I mean, why do you even let me hang out with you? Why bother training me? I'm sure you had family to go home to yesterday. Wouldn't they be worried if you stayed out just because of me? He went very quiet as he looked over towards the kids, talking and eating lunch on the ground. My parents died in the Kyuubi attack. Uncle went quiet, her mouth opening and closing, as she didn't really know what to say. I am sorry. Naruto raised a hand, waving over her apology. Don't bother, it get really sickening after a while. Having everyone's pity. You didn't know, so don't worry about it. He chuckled a humorless laugh. But it was better than anything imagined last few days. I don't know, having you around me just make it less lonely, I guess. As he placed a hand behind his head. As he gave her a genuine smile. I guess that sounds pretty sad, huh? She shook her head no as she didn't want to upset him. As he laughed again as he looked up. You managed to fill that silence pretty well, he said. She smiled at that. As she then punched him in the arm. Ow, he said. Not actually feeling the punch. This was nothing compared to what his mother would dish out when he got a bit cheeky. Thanks for that, said Naruto. From punching you? As Naruto nodded. Yeah, people have been treating me like glass ever since mom and dad died. I'm sick of it. At least you don't tiptoe around me like I might break or something. He turned. It's really refreshing. Anytime, she said as he chuckled. As Naruto's eyes narrowed. It's rude to eavesdrop on people, you know. Uncle looked around. Was he talking to her? But a tall black-haired boy dropped down behind him. As he had the same gaze as Naruto. Apologies. I didn't mean to intrude on anything. Naruto turned. The black-haired boy with the black eyes. He must be a Uchiha by that appearance. This was the one in his class. Hey, it's a free roof. As the boy sat down the other side. So, you're Naruto Namikaze. As Naruto nodded. My mother asked me to look out for you. He reached behind himself and pulled out a plastic container, a bento. Apparently, she and your mother were friends. She asked me to give you this, but you already have a lunch. He blinked as the food disappeared from his hands. I'll take it then. Thank you. As he turned, Uncle was going at the food. As he chuckled. Your friend is quite forward. Tell me about it, Naruto said. As Uncle nudged him in the ribs. As the boy stuck out his hand as Naruto took it. Itachi Uchiha. Naruto smiled and nodded as they shook. I thought as much. Itachi then started to eat his own food as Naruto wondered why he wasn't into his own friend. But he simply shrugged it off. I saw you scale a building. That was quite impressive. Who taught you how to do that? Itachi says he looked over at Uncle. As Uncle wrapped her arm around Naruto's shoulder. As she smiled. Oh, Fish Cake Sensei did, of course, she said. As Naruto's eyebrow twitched at the name once again. Itachi simply chuckled at the name as he ate his bento. I should have expected that much from Namikaze, or Uzumaki for that matter. Am I missing something? What's so special about the name Namikaze? Asked Uncle. As Itachi looked at her to see if she was joking or not. But she wasn't. As he wondered how did she know the obvious things. Well, for one, they were one of the founding clans of the village. And secondly, it was the last name of our fourth Hokage. Uncle spat out the food in her mouth as it fell over the building, covering the teacher that was down below in almost chewed rice. You're the Hokage's son? As she pointed at Naruto. Naruto brushed her hand to the side. What's the Hokage's son? He's dead, remember? His tone was a bit icy than usual. As she remembered what he said about people treating him differently. So she punched him on the arm once again. Yeah, well, I could still beat you down, she said. Both Itachi and Naruto shared a look at the sudden turnaround. But Naruto smiled. The three of them stayed on the roof until their lunch break ended, before they went inside with the other students. As Naruto took his seat in class, he wasn't surprised that Uncle snagged the seat beside him. But he did pause in surprise a bit when Itachi to the other seat, as he wondered when he'd start to attract people like a magnet. Class drank down for another hour until the teacher stood up, smiling for once. Right, we're all going to go to the training field and have brief spars to know where you're at, so we need to know what to improve you guys on. We will do these once a month until they're full taijutsu come and play next year. But if any students have personal taijutsu style from their family or clan, oh, and self-taught style as well, you're full welcome to use them in practice. Alright now, he said, let's go. All the students in the class braced for the gust of wind for Naruto to exit the class. They all then turned to see him sitting still, his arms folded across his chest. What, he said. All of them blinked. As they started to laugh, it was an amusing sight when all of them were staring at him. Naruto simply followed along quietly as they flew outside, as he didn't really pay attention as kids were called up to spar against one another. Most of the time it was pitiful at best. Most of these kids didn't even know to throw a punch. But he watched as Anko was called to fight against the Inuzaka. They took their stances. Anko form actually looked decent, but the other girl's style was more honed. It was probably tested out many times with the other Inuzaka clan members. Anko smiled as she leaned back a bit. Hana shot forward the Inuzaka, as it was the Inuzaka style after all. Her speed was impressive. At the last moment, Anko pivoted on her back foot as she swung away from the attack, as she brought her elbow down on the Inuzaka's back, as Hana dropped to the ground after that hit. But she rolled over and jumped up back. Maybe it was a quit to easily dismiss Anko drive. I'd beaten him. It continued like this for a minute or two. The girl would launch fast and sloppy strikes on Anko, who would counter, just moving on her waiting foot. Finally, the Inuzaka Hana seemed to realize what her opponent was doing as she readjusted her attacks. As she spun to one side, she launched forward as she tried to kick away Anko's leg, but Anko jumped just in time, as Hana was right in front of her now. So Anko latched out the right leg and smashed it right in Hana's face. Hana went sailing out of a small ring, dazed, as Anko came out with a big smirk on her face. The teachers were shocked. It was damn near impossible for a civilian student to defeat a clan head student in pure taijutsu, especially this early in the academy. After all, clan heads and clan member students, they always get extra training even before they join the academy. And this girl Anko was just a civilian. As Anko came over with a smirk, she gave Naruto a look to say beat that. Itachi's name was then called up by a civilian trainee. The boy rushed forward trying to get an early hit in. Itachi waited for him to get close and then blocked the boy's punch, pushed him to the side and struck him right in the chest. The boy was sent flying back out of the ring as Itachi walked over to Anko and Naruto and sit down. As the teachers were a bit disappointed, they wanted to see him fight. They were looking for decent candidates for him to fight next. A few more fights later and Naruto was called up. He was the last part of the day. Surprisingly, his other opponent was the last Uchiha, as the boy had spiky unruly hair. His name was Shisui Uchiha. They both entered the ring as Naruto shifted into a taijutsu stance. A few of the teachers blinked at Naruto instantly, recognized his father's stance that was built around its amazement speed. Shisui stepped into the typical Uchiha stance. You know, that style is more effective with the Sharingan, Naruto said. Shisui simply smiled. I have to make do until its service. Then, it will be more effective, said Shisui. As Naruto simply nodded, as neither of them moved. The both of their style was good for countering, so Naruto was going to start it first, as he shot forward in a blur of red, surprising the teachers and the students by his speed, as he lashed out towards Shisui's left side. But Shisui blocked it and lashed out towards her head. Naruto smiled when he saw that this boy was good, as Naruto moved his body out of the way of Shisui's punch, as he brought his fist up and landed 3 blows on Shisui's arm. Shisui was caught off guard by that, but he swung as he brought a kick towards Naruto's chest, as Naruto was then skidded back, but he came to a stop. Impressive, Naruto said, but still, he couldn't be upstaged by Anko, as Naruto rushed forward, dissolving into a blur of red. He looked like he was going to deliver a spinning kick to Shisui's chest, but then suddenly dropped down low, as he thrust upwards, knocking Shisui in the chin. Shisui was sent flying out of the arena, as he dropped to the floor outside. Not very injured badly, but he still lost. He was surprised. This was just barely the start of the academy, and most of the teachers were writing Naruto off as a genin already. Well, if his other skills matches taijutsu. They were impressed with Shisui as well, but they had to see more. They were done for the day as Naruto walked over and helped up Shisui, who took his hand, as he started to walk off before he felt a hand on his shoulder, as he turned to see Shisui smiling at him. Hey, you want to train sometime? It's so good to find a sparring partner, especially when everyone you train would have the same fighting style. Naruto paused. He was never really invited to do anything before. Sure, I guess, he said. Shisui smiled as he waved goodbye to Naruto. Alright, I'll meet you at the Uchiha compound tomorrow night then. Naruto nodded as Shisui walked off, with Itachi. As Naruto turned to see Anko smirking at him. What? He said. Nothing. Just noticing for someone so cold. You're really attracting a lot of friends. Naruto simply chuckled, as he noticed it as well. The more he wanted to be left alone, the more people flocked to him. I'm not that cold, am I? He asked, as Anko moved closer, mischief in her eyes. Of course not. Anyway, what's on tonight's agenda? Fish cake sensei. Naruto eyebrow twitched at nickname once again. And who say you need training? I saw you fight at Inuzaka, obviously. You've been trained by somebody. Anko crossed her arm. And what if it's all self-taught? Naruto chuckled. Then, I think I should be the one asking for training. Anko snorted as she removed her arms. As if you have all those fancy family moves. Naruto simply shrugged. Are you going home already? Yeah. Why, aren't you? As Anko seemed nervous about something. Oh, yeah, sure, she said, as she made a turn to leave. As Naruto realized she didn't want to go home at all, as she was walking really slow, he sighed. Yeah, it would be good to have some company. Hey, Anko, do you want to go and get something to eat or something? She spun around on her heel. Okay, she said, as she rushed back over and punched him in the arm. If you insist, I mean jeez. As Naruto simply chuckled, as Naruto noticed that she was really nervous about something, especially about with her going home. Anko was surprised. Instead of taking her to somewhere in the village, he led her towards the clan district, as he brought her to a two-story home. As he opened the door and let her inside. You want to eat, right? As Anko nodded, as she took after him. Yeah, but I thought you meant a restaurant or something. She heard Naruto snort from the kitchen, as she saw him place a pot on the stove. Why would I take you to a restaurant when I made the best ramen ever? Anko snickered at that, some of the tension easing away. Isn't that a bit presumptuous, she said, as Naruto turned at her, blinking at a long word for a moment, as his smile returned, thinking that he understood it. Mom taught me the recipe, and hers was the best ramen ever, so mine will be too. He said it, as it should be obvious. In a weird way, the logic makes sense to Anko's mind, as Naruto made the water boil, as he struggled to get onto the tall chair in the kitchen. He was still short. She sounded awesome, Anko said. Naruto nodded a sad smile. Yeah. Hey, you're always talking about my parents. What about yours? I mean, won't they be worried if you don't go home? Anko looked away for a moment, her gaze catching a photo on the shelf for a while, as she saw 4-year-old Naruto on a tall, blonde shoulder, as it was a Hokage. As a red-haired woman is hugging the Hokage there. I don't have parents. I never knew them. As Naruto looked down sadly. I was raised in an orphanage for as long as I could remember. But then, why don't you? Anko turned towards him with a hint of anger, but it was not aimed at him though. I hate it there, she said. The other kids are bullies and mean. As she sighed and looked at the framed photo, wishing she could have memories like that. So who taught you how to fight? As she looked towards him, he was just so genuine and nice. There was a boy, a few years older than us. He was at the orphanage as well. His name was Aoi. There was some kids picking on me because of my eyes, so he beat them up. Naruto was confused. Anko's eyes looked like chocolate. They look fine. He taught me how to fight, but soon after that he left and went to the academy, and I never saw him again. As Naruto just looked at her, still wanted to find out what was wrong with her eyes. Ever since then, the other kids just ignore me, treating me like I didn't belong because I defend myself against them. The people who work there hate me as well. They ignore me as well, thinking I'm a bad influence on the kids. As Naruto couldn't, well, he didn't know what to say at this point. That sounded really lonely. Suddenly his eyes shot open wide, as he nearly fell over as he jumped down, rushing towards the pot on the stove that was boiling over. As he quickly adjusted, as he added in the noodles and the vegetables for flavoring. When he returned, he didn't want to say anything because he didn't want to upset Anko anymore. As she just looked at the photos. When the ramen was done, Naruto laid out on the table in front of her. Thank you, she said. As she started to dig in, her eyes immediately light up when she eat. This is really good, she said, as the both of them enjoyed the ramen. As Naruto took the plates as he watched them, as Anko was standing there, hands behind her, twiddling. So, thanks for the food. I guess I should go then. Naruto cocked his head to the side. He was amazed how she could go from a bubbly pile of energy to a meek little girl. As he looked between her and the door. Well, you don't have to. You can stay here, I guess. It's not like I have to ask my parents or anything. He chuckled lightly, blinking afterwards when he realized what he said. Anko looked startled, not really expecting anyone to be so kind to her. Really? Naruto just nodded without really meaning to, his body reacting automatically. In a flash, Uncle was across the room as she hugged him tightly. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Naruto wasn't sure what to do in the situation, as his nose was assaulted by the scent of earth and grass. You might want to take a shower, he said. She broke away as an embarrassing blushes on her face. Sorry about that. As Naruto led her to the bathroom where she ducked in, as he went back downstairs. As he started to scribble down some note. I know he would be out, exercising, but that could wait a day, he has a guess. After a while, he heard Uncle, as her feet was smacking against the floor. But he wasn't expecting her to come down in a towel, covering her like a full dress. As she laughed with her hand behind her head. Oh, I just remember, I don't have any other clothes. As Naruto looked at her, a blush spread across his face before he beat it back. Not sure why it was there in the first place. Oh right, there should be clothes that fit you upstairs in the closet. My parents never threw anything out. She nodded, still their eyes closed and strange, smiling fashion that just looked cute. Thanks, she said, as she turned around. As he looked at her retreating form, he shook his head. The day just keep on getting longer. As she made her way towards the room with the big bed. As she saw the many photos, she opened up the large walk-in closet and she was surprised. There was a lot of clothes inside. As he was right when he said his parents never threw anything away. As she saw a load of the same tracksuit that Naruto always wear. So they probably belonged to his father. As she spotted a large white cloak in the closet. As she went to hand down silken material. As red flames were at the bottom of it. The Hokage visited the orphanage a few times when she was there. And she was always captivated by this cloak. He always looked so confident, so powerful. It made her wonder if Naruto would be like that someday. As she looked at the rest of the outfits. As she found a long yellow dress that acted as a dress as well. It wasn't really her style, but she didn't have anything else. As she tied a sash around her waist. As she looked at herself in the mirror. They will do until she got her own wash. As she rushed back downstairs, seeing Naruto writing a scroll. As she walked behind him and looked over his shoulder. If Naruto minded that she was doing this, he did not show it. But she smelled a lot nicer now. What you doing? She asked. As he lifted the scroll a bit higher so she could see it. But she did not understand. What are they? Naruto put the scroll back down, putting away his ink brush. Seal. My dad was a master in them. He had me practice my handwriting so I can learn them as well. He told me to always have a scroll with me so I can jot down anything that came to mind. He said it was how he first thought of the Hiraishin. Uncle blinked at the unfamiliar word. The Hiri what? As Naruto smirked as he looked at Uncle. It was my father's signature jutsu. It allowed him to go to any place he placed a sealing formula. As he walked off, she followed him. As he went into a room, as he went through drawers. Before he pulled out a 3-pronged kunai. Most of the time he used these as he pointed at the sealing formula on the handle. He used his surprise opponent and flashed the seal. He used his jutsu to end the third shinobi war, earning his name, Yellow Flash. Uncle listened in amazement, starting to realize why the man was elected Hokage. Wow, he sounds really smart. Naruto nodded another sad smile as he placed the kunai in a drawer. Yeah, but one day I'll figure out how he did it. I'll create even a better jutsu. Something I know he will be proud of, said Naruto. As Uncle smiled at him, as she had no doubt that he could do it, just by determination coming from him. But until then, I have to work my way up from the basics like he did. Uncle pouted. If there was one thing she didn't like, it was having to wait for a long time. Well, just make sure you don't leave me behind when you become the fastest guy alive. As Naruto laughed, of course not. You're my friend, aren't you? Come on, I'm used to training at this time. You can join me if you like. As he walked out towards a large open field at the back of the house. As Uncle stood still. As Naruto's words sank in. She had never had a friend before. No one that would say it like that. The only other person that showed her kindness had abandoned her and threw her aside and moved on with her own life. She just didn't think she could go through that again. She realized she zoned out as she heard Naruto calling her from outside as she made her way. As she slipped on her sandals. The two started to spar as they sparred for a while. As Naruto tested out how effective her taijutsu was. It was an excellent style. Well, it was half-assed, unbalanced, but it was still good. But she was unable to land a hit on Naruto not even once because of his speed. But he corrected a few things in her style in that hour. By the end, she was panting and out of breath, while he was just a bit winded. Usually, a session like that would have him feel the same way as Uncle, but he didn't really feel tired anymore. He just had all this energy inside of him, as he knew exactly why that was. As he looked at his stomach. How come you aren't even tired, Uncle asked, as Naruto shrugged with a smile. I'm just used to it, I guess. She just nodded as she slowly walked back inside. So, where can I sleep, she asked. Naruto froze, as he felt awkward. He didn't really know why though. As Uncle noticed that she clarified the shrug. Like, I'm okay with the couch if you don't have room or anything. He shook his head as he gave her a smile. No, we have a few beds or some fold-out futons. Recently, he has been sleeping in parents' old room, ignoring his old room, because he felt close to his parents in there. As Naruto led her upstairs, this time the opposite direction of the bathroom. As they passed the room, she peeped inside to see a crib inside, and it was painted in blue. Before, she saw him still walking off as she made her way. As she came up to a very bland room, it had a single bed. The walls were painted white, and a few shelves. It was a guest room. The bed was suitably comfortable, while the entire room maintained a usually pleasant, neutral atmosphere. But this was a small palace to Uncle. Because of the orphanage, she shared a room with 2 other girls. You could sleep here if you want. Thanks, it's perfect, she said. Naruto shrugged, still feeling slightly awkward about this. He turned to leave, but she caught his hand. He turned, as he was pulled into a warm hug. Once again, he was in a situation where he had no way to react to. Thank you for being my friend. As Naruto simply nodded, as she then went inside, a small blush on her face. As Naruto walked towards the bathroom in a daze, not realizing the smile that was on his face. The next day, Uncle woke up for once a smile on her face as she woke up in a warm, nice, sweet bed, and she smelled food. As she rubbed her eyes and stretched, before swinging her feet off the bed, as she saw her clothes neatly folded and dry at the end of her bed. She paused in surprise as she slipped them on, not feeling so clean and, well, nicely warm in a long time. As she went downstairs to see Naruto eating his breakfast, a bowl of rice and some sashimi. As another setting was right beside him, it was for her. He looked up at her and smiled, before looking back down the scroll that was next to him. She hesitantly sat down, once again unsure how to deal with this kind of kindness. But her stomach gave out as she digged into the breakfast. When they were both finished, she spoke. Thanks for the clothes and stuff. He simply smiled and shrugged. She was confused about how he was so nonchalant with these kind of kindness that he showed her. No problem, it's one's friend do, right? Come on, we gotta get to the academy. Uncle nodded as she grabbed one of the bentos that he prepared and headed out of the house. The day passed, as the sensei was happy that Uncle was rather subdued today. She wasn't going out of her way to make him trouble. She looked to be in deep thought. Itachi joined them at lunchtime, with Shisui as well, becoming easy friends since the other day. The day ended as Uncle headed back to the orphanage, as she did not accept her offer to come today. She wanted to, but she didn't want to take advantage of his hospitality, just to get away from her own problems. It felt strange going back home now. When Uncle was there, the place seemed a bit more lively because someone else was there with him. As he seemed a bit sluggish, but you remember, as he headed off to the Uchiha compound, he knocked on the massive gate, as there was a man there. His Sharingan was activated as he observed Naruto head to toe. Naruto gave a respectful bow. I was invited to spar with Shisui. He made sure not to phrase like a question, and the man at the gate seemed to get that, as he stepped past, letting Naruto come inside. Shisui home is the last one on the left down that road, as the man closed the gate behind Naruto and walked off. As Naruto made his way towards the house, as he knocked on the door, he was greeted by a kind woman that looked down at him. She had long black hair that went down her shoulders. Her eyes were the same black as many other Uchihas, but they had a strange burden to them. He didn't know why. But it looked like she was a shinobi. She looked like she retired, just like his mother did to raise her family. You must be Naruto Namikaze. Shisui told me that you might be coming over. As Naruto nodded with a polite bow. Yes, Uchiha-san, he said. She patted him on the shoulder. There's no need for that, please. Shisui's in the training ground around back, with Itachi. Naruto thanked her, and followed the direction as he went around the back of the house. The moment he stepped around the corner, he had to duck away, as a fireball came flying past him. Naruto poked his head back around the corner, to see Shisui and Itachi, both of them having a sheepish look on their face. Sorry about that, Naruto. I was just practicing. Naruto just nodded, having seen his life flash in front of his eyes. He hadn't eaten enough ramen. No problem. Shisui smiled as he motioned for Naruto to come over, where he and Itachi was standing. Thanks for coming over. It's good to have a sparring partner that doesn't know my every move. As he looked at Itachi as he spoke, causing Itachi to raise an eyebrow at the accusation. Naruto nodded. It would just be good to have a sparring partner, period. Until now, he had played fights with his father, who never really took him that seriously. It would be beneficial to have a spar with someone close to his level. Do you want to start straight away? Shisui nodded. As Itachi moved out of the way, he wanted to have a spar with Naruto as well. But he would let Shisui go first. It intrigued him to see someone defeat Shisui. Both boys settled into their senses, as a ring was in the training ground. As Itachi gave them the begin, the fight was short. One thing Shisui knew, as he propped himself off the ground, he needed to activate his Sharingan. Another was that Naruto never pulled his punches, as his ribs were currently aching. However, he was happy, hoping that he could learn from his defeats and better himself, as he moved to the side limping from a vicious kick from Naruto as Itachi took his place. If you don't mind, I would like to go as well. Naruto nodded that small grin, feeling confident after beating Shisui again. Like his other opponent, Itachi stepped into the taijutsu stance. But this time, Itachi closed his eyes calmly, as he concentrated, before snapping his eyes open, revealing single Tomo Sharingan. Naruto blinked, completely stunned, as Itachi dashed forward as he went for a sweep to take out Naruto's legs. Naruto pushed off the ground though, but Itachi lashed out, leaping his body forward as he kicked Naruto in mid-air. Naruto was still flying back, but he flipped as he slammed his hand on the ground, stopping himself. As he smiled, he dashed forward as he ducked to the right and drove his fist up. Itachi pulled his head back last moment as he lashed out to grab Naruto's shirt. But Naruto's body blurred out of sight as Itachi felt Naruto smash into him from behind. As Itachi spun around, the both of them had a smile on their face. Shisui was amazed to what he seen. Well, he couldn't really see it because of the speed that Naruto was using, but he never saw anyone land that hit on Itachi before their age group. The two of them traded more blows, Itachi using his Sharingan to predict Naruto's movements, but Naruto using his speed to counter-attack Itachi. It looked like they were perfectly matched, neither of them gained the upper hand. Finally, they both stopped, panting. Both smiled from a good fight. Very impressive your style. Seemed to be able to find all the weaknesses in my own. As Naruto wiped more sweat away. Yeah, and your Sharingan is damn hard to get around, said Naruto. I can't wait to fight you when it evolves. Itachi simply smirked, as did Shisui as well. They were interrupted by slow clapping behind them, as all three boys turned to see an older man. He looked a lot more like an older Itachi, but he had a few wrinkles from age. Impressive, Itachi, I'm proud that you have already advanced so far with your abilities. Itachi bowed politely. Thank you, father. Fukaku smiles as he turns attention to Naruto, his eyes narrowing, but his smile was still there. You're Naruto then. I remember seeing you when you were much younger, cradling your mother's arms when she would visit my wife. I see a lot of your father in you, especially in your abilities and your speed. The two of them wanted you and my son to be friends, and it seems that happened. I hope you can keep Itachi on his toes. As future clan heads, you two need to be as powerful as you can be. As Naruto nodded respectfully, feeling like there was another message behind his words. Thank you, Uchiha-san. As Fukaku nodded and turned back to Itachi. Come Itachi, I have a clan meeting and your mother needs you to watch Sasuke. Itachi nodded, before he smiled to Naruto and Shisui, as he went out with his father. When the two boys were alone, Shisui released a breath. Jeez, that guy always put me on edge. As Naruto chuckled as he turned back to the lighter heart one of his Uchiha friends. He seems alright. Shisui laughed as he walked back in the sparring ring. Try saying that when the guy could have you banished from the clan, with their Sharingan seal. Naruto blinked, wondering why that would ever have to happen. Come on, my side feel better now. Maybe this time I can land a hit on you. Naruto smiled. You can try. But guys, be in subscribe right here for see part 2 of this. And you enjoyed this series? Comment down below and tell me that you want part 2, guys, and I'll be posting it as soon as possible. Remember, thank you for all your help and your support, guys, and yeah, I'm out for now. Stay tuned for what if Naruto's given a second chance. Peace.